Hey everyone, welcome back to Code of the Row. In today's video, we're diving deep into the gameplay ability system, or GAS for short. So we'll cover everything you need to get started, from creating attributes, setting up your character, ability system component, building powerful gameplay abilities and effect, and I'm also going to be showing you how to display your health over to the UI, how to update it properly, and also how to create a spell, a heal spell, which will also update the UI, and we'll even tweak our animation montages in order for us to properly play a fluid motion, such as healing while running. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start off by creating a third person template in Blueprints only, and I'm going to call this GAS interface, and I'll hit create. This project will be available for all Patreon members, so feel free to check that out in the description below. And I will make this replicated so that all clients can see their own HP. And this will be a pretty long tutorial, so feel free to check out the timestamp below, just in case you've already done sections that I've already gone through on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do with my project open, I'm going to head over to edit and go to plugins, and I'll just look for gameplay abilities and enable this and restart my project. And now once my project's restarted, I can go ahead and close this and begin coding. But first, it's good practice to just head over to your edit and project settings and then change this copyright notice to whatever your name is. So I'll just do code with row like so, and I can exit out of that. And now the first thing I'm going to do is actually create some attributes. So I just want to create a current health and max health, so my character can level up and increase their max health, and we'll create curves and so on after that. So I'm going to head over to tools, go to new C++ classes, and I'll select all classes, and I'm going to look for an attribute set. And you won't be able to see this unless you enable gameplay abilities, so make sure you have that enabled in order to see attribute set. I'm going to click next, and I'll just call this RPG attribute set. And I'll go ahead and click create class, and this will launch up Visual Studios for me, and it'll launch your default editor, whatever you set in your project settings. And if there's a pop-up saying to launch your editor, I hit no, and then I went to tools again, create a new C++ class, and I'm going to create a character. And I'll just call this RPG character and hit create class. And now Visual Studios will launch. So after your files open, you'll have your RPG character.cpp, RPG character.header, and RPG attribute set.cpp and header as well. And if you don't see them all open, I separated mine. So characters are in this file, attribute sets are in this file. If you don't see it, you can head over to your project name, click on this drop down under source, and then you'll see your RPG attribute set and so on. You can just double click to open that up. And now let me just minimize this a bit. And I'm going to start with my RPG attribute component and its functions within our header file by including this. So the first thing that I like to do is this. I like to include a macro to easily declare attributes. And what this is going to do is just make our life easier so that we don't have to create a getter, setter, and initializer for every single attribute. We're just going to pass in the attributes that we create in order to pass it to this function. So I'm going to do hashtag define, and I'm going to get the function named attribute accessors. And it's going to pass in a class name and a property name. And don't forget this backslash at the end of this as well. So now we're going to list a few functions that are already native and made for us through gameplay ability system. So the first one I'm going to type in is the gameplay attribute, and you'll see that it's going to start filtering, and you're going to see quite a few pop up here. And the first one we want to look for is the property getter. So I'll double click on this to fill this up, and I can just copy paste this class name and property name over here and just put it here because we're going to pass in for the getter as well. And don't forget that backslash. And now I want to look for the value getter, and I'm only going to pass in the property name from now on. So I'll look for a gameplay attribute value getter. So I actually need all three of these, the getter, the setter, and the emitter, which is the initializer. So I'll type in getter, and then I will just copy in that. And then I'll just copy in that property name, and don't forget the backslash. And then I can just copy paste this actually, and then just change this word getter to setter like so, and then change setter or duplicate it and then change setter to emitter like so. Or I'll explain in just a moment how to utilize this macro. So down here, I'm going to create a public class, which is going to be accessible by anything in our file. And let's start off by creating a constructor. And the constructor, the way we name our constructor is actually just by our class name or the file name that we created like so, and then add an open and close parentheses with a semicolon after. And what this is going to do for us is we're going to be able to initialize our variables or our values inside our constructor. This will automatically run when a new URPG attribute set object is created, and it sets up our initial values and settings needed for the object to work correctly. And I'll show you exactly how it's going to be in our C++ file in just a moment. And now I'm going to begin by creating some health attributes. And in this case, I'm only going to do current health and max health. So now let's declare our current health attribute, and we're going to make it read only in blueprints. So in order to do that, we're going to start declaring by creating a new property, and we're going to select blueprint read only. And these are all native to Unreal Engine, so you can feel free to look around and select which one you want to play with or tinker with. I'm going to set the category to health just to keep it organized. And I want to add this replicated using is equal to function name. And the function name we're going to create for this is going to be called onRep or onRep underscore current health, which just means that we're going to make sure that there's a way to basically say, hey, this is the value of our current health for this character that's using it. And the type for our variable is going to be an F gameplay attribute data. And we're going to call this variable current health. And don't forget your semicolons. I'll just add this description so for any Patreons who download this will know exactly what this is doing. And now I'm going to use that macro that we created earlier. So it'll get our value, it'll get our class name and property name. It'll also get it'll get our current health, it'll set our current health and initialize our current health. So pretty simple. So instead of doing this for every single function, I can just call this function right here like so. And then in parentheses, I want to call my class name. And my class name is this URPG attribute set. And then I'll hit comma and then copy paste in my property name, which is also my variable, like so. And that's how we declare a variable so that we can see it in game. And we'll be able to see attribute set shortly after we set it into our C++ file. But now I'm just going to copy paste this and do the same thing for max health. So I'm just going to add a few spaces after copying it and paste it in. I'll fix up this the spacing, and I'll just change current to max wherever it says current, change it to max here, and then also my comments just so it's more readable and organized for whoever downloads this. Max health here and max health here, and that should cover all of it. And it's going to give us an error saying onRep current health not found. Same with onRep max health, but we'll initialize that in our protected section. So kind of like we created public here, there's also another one called protected and another one called private. So the public, protected, and private are access specifiers that define the level of access for our members. So public, this is just saying that everyone can access this. It's public, it's open to everyone in our blueprints in C++ and so on. And all we need next is our protected. So I'll just type in protected in the same format we created our public, so with a colon, and then I'll click space afterwards. And protected is only for our class itself and by its derived child classes. So it's not accessible by other classes or objects. And now basically in here, I'm just going to add these replication notifieds. And the first one I'm going to call is a function that's going to be called on our clients. So basically for each player, they'll only be seeing their own HP. And even if you're in a party, you'll still be able to see what's updated on each other's ends, such as our current health out of our max health. And in order to do this, I'll be using a native Unreal macro called ufunction. And then I'm going to type in virtual and void. And this virtual void just means we're not going to return anything. And then I'm going to call the name of this. So I'm going to copy this onRep current health. And I'll create a constant, which is going to be the same attribute here that we have in max health and current health, our F gameplay attribute data, and put an and symbol. So this and symbol that we place right after our type, the F gameplay attribute data, this just means that a function's using the direct link to the original attribute data. So it allows us to change the real data without making a copy. And then I'll just call this old current health. And then I'll add a semicolon at the end, and I'm going to repeat this process for the max health. So I'll just copy paste this, and let me leave a comment. So it'll say this time it's for our max health, and I can just copy paste this down here, and I will change onRep current health to onRep max health, and then change old current health to old max health. And now we're almost done. But there are two important functions when using gameplay ability system that we need to go over, which is a pre-attribute change and a post-gameplay effect execute. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we don't want our HP or stats to go above what we want to declare it as. So for example, if you use a potion in game, you don't want that potion to heal you over your 100% HP. And same with dying. We don't want to go below 0 health. We just want to stick to having 0 health. So this is going to be a function that runs before any attribute value changes. So we're basically going to be clamping and validating our variable or our value. So I will call a virtual void pre-attribute change, and we're going to call a const of that F gameplay attribute data with the and sign after because we don't need that copy. And I'll just call this attribute. And then the float will be our new value like so. And now I'm going to add an override after this. And this override is going to tell our compiler that this pre-attribute change, it's a custom version of a function that already exists in the parent class. So it's going to just make sure that it replaces the original behavior. And now I want to do the same thing for the gameplay effect execute. And if you've already gone over gameplay effects on my channel, you'll probably be familiar with this one. And if not, we will go over it in this video. So I'll type in virtual void post gameplay effect execute. And in this case, I'll call a const of a struct, which is going to be our f gameplay effect mod callback data. And we're going to override it again, and I'll hit save. And one issue that I did is for the pre-attribute change, get rid of this data over here. We don't need that. It's just going to be an f gameplay attribute. And now you'll see all these green squiggly lines, and that's just because we haven't actually declared it. So our header file, our RPG attribute set.h, is good for declaring our functions, but we haven't actually implemented it in the corresponding source file, which is going to be our C++ file. So the header file declares the structure of your classes, functions, and variables, pretty much like our blueprint outline, where the C++ file contains the actual implementation, which provides the detailed code to define how declared functions and our classes are going to behave. So for this, we are done with our RPG attribute set.h. And now if I were to go over, I can declare these simply by going over to my C++, or I can just hover over this green squiggly line, click on the screwdriver and select create a definition. And this will automatically create our little function in our C++ file. So the first thing I'm going to do in my C++ file is actually include our net/Unreal network. And this is default to Unreal Engine. And this is pretty much just going to tell us that our replication needs to start working and it will be a multiplayer game. This is our constructor for our URPG attribute set, and this will initialize attribute values. And now inside these curly brackets, the first thing I'm going to do is set our default values for health attributes and our max health. So I'll do a current health.set base value of 100.f, and this 100.f just means the float value of 100. And I'll also set the current value to 100f as well. This is not 100% set in stone. We'll be able to change this in blueprints once we get to the Unreal Engine portion itself. And now I can just copy paste this and change current health to max health. And just remember, it does have to use the same variables that we set in our header file. So over here we set current health, and over here we set max health, like so. So this is pretty much all we need for our constructor. And now we want to create a function that's going to be called on the clients when current health is updated. This is so we can synchronize the new values across everyone playing your game. So I'll make a comment over here regarding that. And this function isn't going to return anything, so I'll start with void, and I'll call that URPG attribute set on rep current health, which shows up, and I can actually just copy what I declared in my header earlier. So in my header, we have this on rep current health of a const f gameplay attribute data, calling that old current health. So I can actually just copy paste this over here, like so. And then I will open this up because it is a function, and inside I want to call that gameplay attribute underscore rep notify, and this rep notify is going to be our signal to the server to update our HP properly. And we're going to have to pass in our class name, which is our URPG attribute set, and then also pass in the value that we need to update, which is our current health, and then pass in what it was before, which is going to be our old current health that we set over here. And don't forget your semicolon. And I can just copy paste this and do the same thing for the max health. And just like so, I just copy pasted it and just changed all my current health values to max health, like so. And now over in our header file, we made this function called pre-attribute change and post gameplay effect execute. And now let's actually utilize those and create the functionality of it in our C++ file. So I'll add a couple spaces and I'll just write a comment of what this is going to do. So pretty much what we're doing here, it's going to run before any attribute value changes, and it's going to handle our clamping. So I'll call void URPG attribute set : and then that pre-attribute change that we created in our header. And I'm going to pass in the values I created for it, like so. Just copy pasting this here. And then I'll open curly brackets and a closing bracket. And inside, I'm going to call a super, which is going to be the pre-attribute change. And this super just means we're calling the parent of this. And we're going to pass in that attribute and the new value that we assigned to it here. And now let's clamp the new value of current health to make sure it doesn't exceed max health. So if our attribute is equal to get current health attribute, then open curly brackets, then we're simply just going to assign our const float max health value is going to be equal to max health dot get current value, and the new value is going to call an fmath : clamp. And this clamp just means that we can't go over whatever value we're setting it. So the new value can't go under 0.0f, and it can't go over max health value. And that's all we need for our pre-attribute change. So now under this, let's add some logic that'll happen after any gameplay effect modifiers. So I'll call this void attribute : and then I also want to copy this from my header. So I'll grab this post gameplay effect and the rest of whatever's in the parentheses, like so, and then open the curly brackets again. And now I want to do the same thing. I'm just going to call the parent of this. So it's going to be super post gameplay effect execute. And we're going to pass in that data variable that we set over here. And now I want to check if the modified attribute is going to be current health. So if the modified attribute is current health, so if data dot is equal to get current health attribute, then inside this if statement, we're going to clamp the current health between 0 and max health. So our float new health is going to be our fmath : clamp. And it's going to be our current health dot get current value. And our bottom will be 0.0f. And our max will be max health dot get current value. And if that's so, and then we're just going to set the current health to new health, which is going to be either 0 or max health if it tries to go below or above. And now let's go ahead and define. And now to define which properties are going to be replicated over the network, we're going to call that void uRPG attribute set. And the function for this is get lifetime replicated props. And in here, we're just going to pass in a T array, f lifetime property, and out lifetime props, which will be a const, and then open up those curly brackets like so. And now I'm going to call the parent of this again and pass in that out lifetime props that we created. So I'm going to type in super : get lifetime replicated props, out lifetime props. And then we're going to replicate the current health and the max health to all clients. I'll create a comment here. And now the function for this is going to be our do rep lifetime, which is going to be a condition to notify. And we're going to pass in the following, which is going to be our class from uRPG attribute set. And we're going to pass in current health, and the condition is going to be none. And rep notify will be always. And now I can just copy paste this and do the same for the max health. And all I need to do is just change this current health, just change current health to max health here, like so. And I'll hit Control Save on my RPG attribute set.h and my .c++. So you're going to see this red squiggly line, and that'll probably clear up after we hit clean on our project. But let's go ahead and start editing our character. And now let's start with our RPG character.header file. So in here, I need to include the following and make sure that your generated .header stays at the very bottom. So I need to include the ability system interface to work with our ability system. And then I also want to include the ability system component for our attributes and gameplay effects. And I also want to include that RPG attribute set.header that we created earlier so that we can reference stuff from our public and protected as stated here. If I included any of these in our private, it wouldn't be accessible from our character because it's only private to this. So you'll see that we have this constructor created to set our default properties for this character. And this is just our standard template. And next to our public a character, I just want to start off by adding a public. I want to extend this to the iAbility system interface just by typing in public iAbility system interface over here. And under our constructor, right under our public, what I want to do next is actually implement the interface and return the ability system component. And when we change our character from our base character to our RPG character, you're going to see that this ability system component will get added under our component section in Blueprints. And then I'll add a star after this. And then we are just going to get ability system component, and I'll call a const override. Now under our protected section, I want to add an ability system component that manages our attributes and effects. So I'm just going to call that uProperty function, which is going to be blueprint read only. And the category will be abilities, and the meta will be allowed private access is equal to true. And now I need to create a variable for it that references the class name. So I'm going to type in uAbility system component star ability system component. And this star just means that it's a pointer to our ability system component. And now, just like we did with our ability system component, I want to do the exact same thing for our attribute set. So I just copy pasted this, and then I changed the class uAbility system component to uRPG attribute set. And we just called our attribute set that we declared in our previous file. And now I want to create a file to initialize our character's attributes whenever the game starts. This is to prevent that when we load in, it'll just say 0 or something. And then after we get hit or healed, then it'll update. We just want to give our character or our UI we just want our UI to be accurate from the very start. So I'll just call this void initialize attributes like so. So now back in my public section, I'm going to create a blueprint event in order to handle any health changes so that we can update it to the UI. So I'll make a comment of that here. And for this, I'm just going to write a U function, and I'll call in a blueprint implementable event. And this is so that I can call it within my RPG character. And the category will be health. And then it's just going to call a void on health changed. And it'll be a float of a delta value and a const of an f gameplay tag container event tags. And now down here under my second public, and now I want functions to handle the attribute changes. And I'll just add that function that we created up here. So this one will be the void handle health change. So I'm going to call this handle health change. And it'll be a const of an on attribute change data, and we'll pass in the data. And I also want to specify which properties are going to be replicated over the network. So I'll call that same get lifetime replicated props and a const override like so. And I'll hit control save. And now I can start defining these. And now I can start implementing the functionality in my C++ over here. So at the top, we only have this include RPG character.h, and there are a few more that I need to include. So I want to include that gameplay effect that we're going to be creating. And this is just for just to apply effect. And then I also want to include gameplay effect extension, which is going to be the header for working with effect context. And then I also want to include the attribute set that we created, the RPG attribute set, like so. And then I also want to include the networking stuff. So it's going to be the net/Unreal network. And now the first thing I want to do is actually initialize our ability system component and enable replication. So down here, I'm going to type in ability system component, and I'm going to type equal because this is our variable name. So this ability system component will be a create default subobject, and it's going to call a uAbilitySystemComponent system component class, and the text is just going to be ability system component. And now for our ability system component, I'm just going to set is replicated to true, like so. And I want to set the replication mode to mixed, simply by just calling the ability system component again. But this time I'll set replication mode to mixed, like so. And I'll comment these for anyone who is going to be downloading this via my Patreon. And now I just want to initialize the attribute set component for managing health and any other attributes we add to this later on. So I'll type in attribute set is equal to create default subobject, just like we have here. And I'm going to call the uAttributeSet class, like so, and the text will just be attribute set. And then I want to return the ability system component for this character. And I'll just call a simple function, and I'll just use a simple function, which is going to derive from our uAbilitySystemComponent system component class. It's going to reference our RPG character that we set here, get ability system component, and we're going to return the ability system component. And now down here on our begin play, under super begin play, I want to call that initialize attributes that we created. So this will help initialize our attributes when the game starts to what we set it to up here. And now I'm just going to bind this function, and I'm just going to bind the function to handle health changes to the delegate in the ability system component. So if ability system component and attribute set, so basically if both of these are true, then from my ability system component, I'm going to call a function. I'm going to call this function get gameplay attribute value change delegate, which is going to call the attribute set of get current health, in this case for our function that we created for the get current health attribute. And we're going to add this object to our character and call that handle health changed. And now for those who want to initialize attributes and gameplay effects within C++, you can just add that void ARPG character : initialize attributes function that we created earlier. And pretty much in our curly brackets, we're going to see if ability system component and attribute set is true, or if it's available, then we can do something in here. But for me, I am going to just do this within my character BP. And for those who are more blueprint oriented, you can just do it like so. But I am going to leave some comment that you can uncomment in order to just do this directly in C++. And now under my initialize attributes, I'm just going to add something to handle our health changes, which will trigger events to update our UI. So I'll create a function called handle health change with a const of on attribute change data, and we're going to be passing in the data. And then I'll create a float new health is going to be the data.new value, and the float old health is going to be equal to data.old value. And then I want to calculate the difference to find out how much has changed. So I'll do a float delta value is equal to new health minus old health. And then I'm going to trigger the blueprint event to update the health display or UI, which is going to call the function on health changed, and we'll pass in the delta value, f gameplay tag container, like so. And then I want to specify again which properties should be replicated over the network. And in this case, I'm going to get that get lifetime function again that we've been using. And then I'm going to call the parent of it by calling super get lifetime replicated props. Then I ensure that the ability system component and the attribute set are replicated to the client. So I'm just going to call that do rep lifetime ARPG character and look for that ability system component we initialized earlier. And then the same thing for my attribute set. So I can just copy paste this and then change my ability system component to attribute set like so. And for these two functions that we have this tick setup player input component, I can just get rid of these and I'll hit control save, make sure everything is saved. And now the last thing I need to do before I actually launch my project is on the right in the Solutions Explorer, I'm going to drop down my project name and then go to source, drop this down again, and you'll see this project name.build.cs. So I'm going to open this up, and next to our public dependency module names, I need to add 3 modules that are related to our gameplay ability system. So I'm going to add gameplay abilities, and I'm going to add gameplay tags, and I'm going to add gameplay tasks, like so. And then I'm just going to right click on my project name and select clean, and then I'll right click and click rebuild once this is done cleaning. And then I'll right click and click rebuild, like so. And don't forget, you do not need this backslash on the very last one. And if you're getting an issue with this red squiggly line data, then you need to go to the top of your RPG attribute set.c++ and add this include gameplay effect extension.h to get rid of that. And now I'll go ahead and launch my project. And now with my project launch, I'm just going to head over to my content, third person blueprint, and open up that BP third person character. And on the top right, you're going to see that it says parent class is character. And I want to go to class settings and just change it from character to the RPG character class that we created. And now you'll notice on the left, it's going to add this ability system component like so. And now with my ability system component, I can actually just drag this out. And from here, I can look for a get float attribute from ability system component. And for the attribute, you'll see that it now shows my RPG attribute set.current health and my max health. So I'll connect these here. And I'm just gonna look for a debug key F. And when I click F, I want to print a string. And the string I want to print is actually just going to be a formatted text. And I'm going to look for a format text and plug this into the string right here. And I'll plug the return value into one of these and add 2 pins. And I can get rid of this. And I'll plug in the current health to 0 and the max health to 1. And now I'll put in curly brackets a 0 and then slash and then another curly bracket for 1. And these 0 and 1 acts as a variable. Now when I hit compile and save and click play in my map, I can hit F, and now you'll see on the top left, it shows my 100 out of 100. And it's showing 100 as default because that's what we initialized in our code when we created our constructor. So now let's do a few things. I want to set some sort of way so my character can level up, my max health will update and increase as I level up. And then I also want to portray this on a UI or user interface. I want to be able to see my health bar. So let's start off by creating some sort of stat curve so that when we level up, our max health will go up. And I want this to be reflected on our HP bar that we're going to create via the UI itself as well. So first thing I'm going to do is go back to my map and in my content browser. So in my content browser, I'm going to right click and create a new folder, and I'll just call this folder stats. And inside this, I'm going to right click and create some sort of a curved, and I want to create a curve table. So I'll go to miscellaneous, and then I'll select this curve table over here. And for the type, the interpolation type, I'm going to make it a constant because I'm going to have a set solid static value every single time I level up. So I'm going to hit create curve table, and I'll call this something like starting stats. And I'll double click to open this up, and you'll see that I have these curves option, and currently it's just blank. So I'll just double click curve and just type in health like so, and this will actually only represent my max health because for this example, I just want to increase my max health. So I'm going to click on this icon to append a new column, and the number of this column will act as my level. So I'll set this value to be something like 200, and then I'll append another one, and then this one will be 300, and then at level 3, actually I'll set it to 100 at level 1, 200 to level 2, 300 to level 3, and I can just keep going up as much as I want, like so. And now I set it up so every single level, I want my max health to increase by 100. And now I want to go back to my third person map, and I want to right click and go to blueprint class and create something called a gameplay effect. And this gameplay effect will be how we initialize our stats for our character. So I'll create a gameplay effect and just call this GE underscore player stats. And when I open this up, it's going to look like a pretty empty event graph, but on the right hand side here, I'm just going to add some modifiers to represent every single stat I want to make. And in this case, it's just going to be my max health. So I'll add a modifier and I'll expand this dropdown, and the attribute I'm going to be modifying is going to be our RPG attribute set.max health. And for the modifier op, I'm going to make it override because I'm going to make sure that our starting stats is going to be our overridden rule. So this will be our constant, or this is what's going to take priority to be our max health. And the modifier magnitude, when I expand my modifier magnitude, I can select use a curve table and select starting stats. And the curve I want to select is going to be called health. So now you can see the preview. So when I'm at 1, it's 100. When I'm at 10, it's 1000, and so on. And that's all I need for my GE underscore player stats. And if you were to have more attributes and stuff, you can keep adding more and more to the modifiers. So now I can go back to my BP third person character, and at the end of my event begin play, I actually just want to add this gameplay effect to my character. And I can drag off this add mapping context and apply a gameplay effect to self. And it's automatically going to tag this ability system component as my target because it needs that ability system component. And the gameplay effect is going to be that GE player stats we created like so. So let's go ahead and just debug this as an example. So when I click F, it's going to print out my current health out of my max health. And now when I debug key G, for example, I'm going to actually level myself up. And in order to do that, I just need to get a variable of my level. You'll see this level. I can just right click and promote this to a variable, and I'll just call this something like player level, like so. And I can compile, and I'll leave the level starting at 1. So I'll hit compile. And now down here for my debug key G, I just want to add 1 to this level. So I'm going to get my player level and look for the add operator and add it by 1. And then I'm just going to drag this out again and set the player level to whatever this plus 1 is. So I'll click set. And then I also want to print out the player level, just like that. So now every time I click G on my keyboard, we're going to level up by 1. And then when I click F, it'll show my current health out of my max health. So in this case, my max health will be the only thing rising every time I level up. And then after the print string, I'm just going to reapply that gameplay effect. So now I'll hit compile and save. And then I can plug in my player level over here, like so. So now when I hit compile and save and go back to my third person map, now when I hit F, it'll show 100 out of 100. And then when I hit G, I'll level up to 2. And now when I hit F again, it'll show 100 out of 200. And it'll keep updating as I level up. And you'll see that the right side is my max health, which is updating properly, and my left side is my current health, which is staying at 100. And now I want to make a health bar so I can actually see this on my user interface. So I'm going to go back to my content and right click and create a new folder, and I'll just call this HUD. And I'll double click into HUD and I want to create a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is right click and go over to Blueprint and look for a Blueprint interface. And I'm going to call this BPI underscore health interface. I'll double click to open this up and I'm going to call this function update health. A blueprint interface in Unreal Engine is a way to define common functions that different blueprints can use to communicate and share behaviors without directly needing to be inherited from the same class. So we don't need any hard references in order to reference this, and it's a much more optimized way for us to update our UI. So I'm actually going to change this to update health display just to notify myself that this is specifically for the UI. And for my input, I'm going to add 2 floats, and one will be called current health and the other one will be called max health. And that's all I need in this, so I can hit compile and save. Now back in my content browser, I'm going to right click and go to user interface and create a widget blueprint, and this will be called health bar widget. And I'll double click to open this up. And in here, it'll look like an empty graph, but the first thing I'm going to add is a canvas panel. And then I also want to add a progress bar, and then I want to add a progress bar like so. And I also want to add some text just to see how we can display text onto our HP bar. So for the progress bar, I'm just going to anchor this to the top left. I'll size the X 400 or 300 on the X, and then I'll do 40 on the Y, and I'll just do a 20 on the position X, 20 on the position Y, just to keep it away from the corner a little bit. And now for the percent, I'm just going to set this to 0.5 just so I can see what color is going to be filled in and what color is going to be empty with. And for this fill color and opacity, I'm going to just change this something to like a brighter red, like so. And now I'm going to click on this drop down next to style. And then under background image, I'm just going to change it to red. And then I'll drag this value down to change the hue of this or the color of it to be much darker. And then I'll select OK. And then for the text, and then I'm also going to change the name from progress bar 44 to something like health progress bar. And for the text block, I'm going to select this, make sure is variable is checked, and change this to health text. And I can just, I'll just anchor this to the top left again, position this X and Y as 2020. And then for the size X, I'll do 300 again. And for the size Y, I'll do 40 just to match it. And I'll leave it like this, and I'll hit compile and save. And now all I need to do is in the graph up here, when I click on the top right, I can actually just delete all these 3. I don't need any of these. And what I just need to do is just right click and look for a custom event. And I'll just call this update health bar. And this custom event will take in 2 inputs. One is going to be type float, and the other one is going to be type text. And my float will be called health percent, like so, and my text will be called health text. And I'm just going to drag out my health progress, and then I'm going to drag this out again and look for a set percent. And the percent of this health percent will connect to the in percent for the set percent, and I'll connect the execution pins like so. And then I'll drag out the health text, get health text, and for this one, I'm going to set the text, and in parentheses, you should see text like so. And I'll connect this health text over here, and I'll just clean this up for you guys to be able to see this properly. And then I'll connect the execution pins again. And I'll hit compile and save, and that's all I need for my UI. And now I want my player controller to actually do all the work on submitting my information to my user interface. And the reason why I want to do this is because every character has their own player controller. And when we do multiplayer, everyone will be able to see their own HP accordingly and properly. So what I'm going to do now is just right click, go to Blueprint class and select player controller. And I'll just call this gas player controller BP. And I'll double click to open this up. And I'll head over to my event graph, and on begin play, I just want to first create a widget, and this widget is going to be that health bar widget we just created. So I'm going to look for health bar widget, and then I'm going to right click the return value and promote this to a variable, and I'll just call this something like health bar widget ref for the reference. And then I will just add this to the viewport, and just make sure you connect this node over to target so we know what to add on begin play to our viewport. And now I want to call a way for us to actually update our health display. So in our BPI health interface, we created this function called update health display, but I need to find a way for it to communicate in our player controller. So I can delete this event tick, and in the class settings, I'll go to implemented interface and add that BPI underscore health interface we created. And now on the left under interface, you'll see this function called update health display. I'll double click to showcase this, and you'll see it says current health and max health. And now I simply want to grab this health bar widget reference and select get health bar widget reference. And from here, I'm able to access this custom event that we created called update health bar. So I'll drag this out and look for that update health bar like so to call this function. And it's already going to have these parameters that were used to call in our input over here. So the health percent and health text. And now this will be pretty simple for us. So I'll just connect this execution pin, and I'll connect current health to a divider or a divide node, and connect max health to the other one, and that will pretty much just tell us what our health percent is. And now for the health text, I can just drag this out and look for a format text. And I'll just drag current health in one of these and click add two pins like so. And then I'll just drag current health to 0 and max health to 1. And in my format text, I'll do curly brackets 0 / curly brackets 1. And I'll actually write health in front of it with a colon just to make it more game oriented. You can write HP or you can write whatever you want. And just like that, this looks good to me. And now the last thing we need to do is open up our character. So back to our BP third person character, I need to tell the player controller when to actually update our health and what will happen in order for us to update it. And in our C++, we did create an event to actually calculate our on health change. So down here, I'll call an event on health changed that we created via C++. And pretty much whenever our health changes, I just want to update the health display, which is connected to our BPI health interface. And from the target, a lot of tutorials will tell you to get player controller. And the problem with this is our player index is set to 0. Everyone will pretty much just show the same health, which we don't want to do. I don't want one character like player 2 to heal and affect player 1 when he's just trying to heal himself. So what I'm going to actually do instead is get controller, and the target will be pawn like so. And for our current health and max health, we can actually just get this exactly how we got it up here for our debug key F. So I'll just copy paste this down here. From our ability system component, we're getting our RPG attribute set.current health and returning it to our current health. And then we're also going to be returning our max health over to our max health like so. So I'll comment this and call this update health. And I'll just make this dark, personal preference, and hit compile and save. And we're not quite done yet because I wanted to actually update the first time we begin play. So from our begin play, all I'm going to do is just drag this back a bit, and I'm going to type in sequence. So first it'll do all this. So it'll add our mapping context and give us our stats and so on. But then after that, I actually just want to call that update health display once. So I'll call update health display, and I can actually just copy paste all of this like so, and then just paste it right here. And this will ensure that the first time we actually call our HP, it will update properly. So now if I were to hit play, nothing would happen because I did not set it in my game mode. So when I click on this dropdown, I'll go back to my HUD folder, and I want to set my gas player controller BP as my player controller class over here, like so. And now I can hit play, and you'll see that it says my health 100 out of 100 on the top left, exactly how we set it. But I have an issue. So when I click G to level up, it's not updating the max health. And that's because we only currently set it up in C++ to only update when our current health changes. So in order to change that, instead of going to my C++, I can just head over to my BP third person character, and down where we call this update health, for this event on health change. I could either add this or modify this in C++ in order to calculate for my max health, or I can simply just add this function that we created, not this part, and just copy this over to my print string, which is going to print our level and update our gameplay effect. And you want to make sure that it updates after the gameplay effect takes effect to determine what level we are. So now when I go back to my third person map and hit play, I'll hit F and it'll show I'm level 1 or 100 at 100 HP. And then when I click G, it's going to level up, or it's going to update my text appropriately. And I'll keep clicking G until my health shows 100 or 100 out of 1000. And it's updating correctly. And that pretty much covers our UI portion. And let's go ahead and create a gameplay ability so we can just test out our HP going up. So what I want to do first is just import a simple animation to show you guys how it is to create an ability using Gameplay Ability System. So I'll head over to mixamo.com, and for search, I'm just going to search for something like cast, or I'll search for magic. And now I'll see this this spell pack. I don't need all of them, so I'm just going to look for the one. So I'll just look for the Standing 1H Cast Spell 01. And I'll click download, and I'll just download it at 60 FPS like so. And while that's downloading, I'm going to add this FX Variety Pack to my project. So I'll add this to my gas interface project and click. And now that I've downloaded my magic spell pack, I'm just going to import my XBot first. So I'll actually right click and create a new folder called anims and get into it. And then I'll import my XBot and click import all. And then I want to import that standing cast spell 01 and make sure that the XBot is selected on my skeleton. And I'll click import all. And now I can hit Control-Shift-Save to save everything. And I'm going to right click, and then I'm just going to retarget the animations for my character, which is the Quinn_simple, like so. And then I'll double click on this just to see how the preview is, and I can click export animations. And I'll just export this into my anims pack like so. Click export. And now I'm just going to open this up, and it looks good to me. And I'll go back to the folder. I'm going to right click, and then I will actually just create an anim montage. And I'll call this am_spell. And now double click to open this up. So this looks pretty good to me, but I'll need it open for what we're about to do when we create our ability. I'll go back to my content, and I'm going to right click and create a new folder, and I'll call this abilities. And in here, I will just right click and create a blueprint class, and I'm going to look for something called gameplay abilities. And this will pretty much be our core functions for our combat system to use gas in general. So I'll select gameplay ability and click select, and I'll call this GA_heal. So I'll double click to open this up. So you'll see this event called activate ability and one on end ability. And now what I'm going to do is just drag this out and look for a play montage and wait. And the montage is going to be that one that we just created called am_spell. And then after this, I pretty much want this to cast at a certain time. So for example, I want my heal to actually happen when I get around this point right here. So back in my GA_heal. And now from my play montage and wait, I'm going to look for a wait gameplay event. And what this is going to do is I'm going to be able to pass in a tag for us to determine when to actually continue after this event is received. So back in my animation montage, I want to add something right around here for my heal to actually happen. And in order for this, I just need to create an anim notify to insert here that can pass data through a tag. So back in my third person map, I'm just going to right click, go to blueprint class and look for anim notify. And I'll select anim notify, and I'll just call this an_spell, double click to open this up, and I'm going to override the receive notify function. And I'm going to space this apart a bit, and from mesh comp, I'm going to look for the get owner. And from my get owner, I'm just going to send gameplay event to actor. And I'll tag the execution pins together just so it goes in this order. And for the event tag, I'm going to right click and promote this to a variable, and I'll just leave the name as event tag. And I want this to be instance editable by clicking on this eyeball icon over here, or selecting instance editable in my details panel. And I'll hit compile and save. And the reason why I want this to be instance editable just means that I can edit this within the instance we have it. So for example, when I go to my animation montage spell, I can just right click on my track, and now I can see this AN spell appear under my notifies. And when I left click on this, you'll see this event tag. This is the part that's editable now. And the event tag I'm going to create is just going to be something like ability.heal. And I'm going to add this to my default gameplay tags.ini, and then I will just hit that check mark to add it onto my spell. And now I'll go back to my GA_heal, and the event tag that I'm looking for is that ability heal. And now basically whenever this ability heals happens, then I can do something. And then this will pretty much go forward. So I'm going to right click and look for get avatar actor from info. And then I want to get my ability system component. And then from here, I just want to apply a gameplay effect to self. And we're going to have to create one that will determine how much our heal will actually heal us for. And then I'll plug in that event received over to this gameplay effect to self. So let's go ahead and create a gameplay effect class. So now I'll go back to my abilities folder, and I'm going to right click and create a new blueprint class. and look for a gameplay effect. And then I will select this and click select, and I'll call this GE underscore heal. And I'll double click to open this up. And now with this open, all I want to do is just, let's add our HP by 100, our current health. So I'm going to add a modifier. I'm going to make it the duration policy instant because it's going to be an instant heal. And in my modifier, I'm just going to select my current health attribute and I'm going to add. And then under my modifier magnitude, I'm just going to add a scalable float of 100. And that's it. And that's all I need here. And now I'll go back to my GA heal or my gameplay ability heal, and I'm going to select that GE underscore heal or gameplay effect heal that we created here. And now I can hit compile and save. And one last thing I need to do is I think I'm going to add a cooldown for this because I don't want my characters or allies or enemies to constantly just spam heal and run around. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go back to my third person map and create another gameplay effect. And this one will actually just be called GE underscore heal cooldown. And I'll double click to open this one up. And for this one, the duration policy will be duration. And I'm going to give myself a cooldown of something like 5 seconds just by selecting 5 next to scalable float magnitude. And for this component, I want to be able to grant these tags to my actor. So under components, I'm going to click grant tags to target actor. This is going to give us data telling our character that this spell is on cooldown for us. And then for the tag, I'm just going to create one called ability.heal.cooldown. So I can click on this plus sign and I'll look for ability.heal.cooldown like so, just to keep my tags a bit organized. And I'll click add new tag and select this. So I'll hit compile and save. And that's pretty much all I need here. And now when I go back to my GA underscore heal, I can drag my nodes out. I can just look for that commit ability cooldown like so. And then essentially after we commit that ability cooldown, I'm going to just end my ability like so. I'm just going to end my ability. And now I'm going to go over to my class defaults and I want to give myself an ability tag. And the ability tag I'm going to give myself is going to be that ability.heal. Or for this case, I'm actually just going to add something called ability.one. And I can give myself a tag called ability.one in this case. You can also use your ability.heal, and I'll just select that. And whenever my ability ends, I'm just going to print a string just to double check for debugging purposes and say ability or heal ability ended. And then I'll hit compile and save. And now let's actually try this on our character. So when I go back to my BP third person character, after I give myself my stats, I can just grant myself an ability by looking for give ability and then using the ability system component. And the ability I want to give myself is going to be that GA or gameplay ability heal. And directly under this, I'll just add a simple debug key and I'll do something like 5. And when I click 5, I'm going to try to activate an ability from our ability system component. And I'll do it by the tag we created. And now I can right click and promote this to a variable and I'll call this heal tag or something. And when I hit compile, I can actually edit it over here. And the default value is going to be that ability.one. So I'll hit compile and save. And now when I head over to my third person map and I click 5, I'm going to heal myself. And you're going to see that my animation ends a little early, which I don't want it to. And I'm not actually healing anything because I'm at max HP. But if I click J or if I click G to level up and then I try healing, you'll see my HP goes up by 100. So that's exactly the result we're looking for. But let's go ahead and fix that animation up. And I also want to add a special effect. So the easy way for us to add a special effect is by going over to our animation montage, and I'm going to add a new track. I'm just going to right click and under add notify state, I'm going to look for a time particle effect. And I'll just have this heal take place from around when my character looks like he's about to start casting to after it's actually over. So around here. And now under this PS template, I can look for some sort of heal to happen. So I'm going to look for this heal aura that comes with the effects variety pack that we downloaded. So that when I play it, nothing actually happens. And that's because we didn't assign which socket name to play this from. So I'm just going to select the root of my character because I want this to play at the bottom like so. And that looks good to me. Another issue that we were having is when we were trying this out, I can just spam this heal. So I don't want my players to be able to spam it. And I also don't want to constantly have this on start. So when I go back to my gameplay ability heal in my class default, and for block abilities with tag, I'm just going to select that ability.one. And this will make sure that I can't spam my heal. So let's go back and test this out. So now when I click 5, it'll only cast once and it'll keep casting over and over because we didn't apply that cooldown. So now when I go back to my gameplay ability, you'll see this cooldown section called cooldown gameplay effect class. And I can select my gameplay effect heal cooldown like so. And now what this is going to do is I'm only going to be able to, I can spam my heal as much as I want, but I can only actually play it once per 5 seconds. So I'm going to wait 5 seconds and it's going to let me cast it again. But I want to actually play my animation, so let's go ahead and fix that. So on my GA underscore heal, I'm going to break apart this end ability after my commit ability cooldown. And over here, pretty much after my play montage and wait, I'm going to just drag my on completed on blend out, on interrupted, and on canceled over here, and hit compile and save. And now you'll see that my animation plays the whole way through, and it looks great. But now there's one final step that I want to do. When I run and cast, my legs are not blended properly. I just want my upper body to be the one casting the spell whenever I run around like this. And this will just be simply by fixing our animation blueprint. So I'm going to head to my BP third person character by going to third person, selecting blueprints and opening up that BP third person character, and I'll click on my mesh, and on the right you'll see this anim class. So I can just click on this magnifying glass to find this in my content browser, and it's going to take us directly to our characters, mannequins, animations folder. And I'll double click to open up this ABP Quinn, but it is a child class of our ABP Manny, so we're going to have to make our adjustments over there. So I'll click on this pencil icon to automatically open this up and go to it. And now in my anim graph, I'll select anim graph. All I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to unpin this from the control rig, and I'll break this apart by holding Alt and left clicking. And from my main state, I just want to save this to a cached pose, and I'll just call this main cached pose like so. And I'll just leave this here. And now what I want to do is just right click and look for that main cached pose. And then I also want to duplicate this. So one will be at the top and one will be at the bottom. And for this slot, I'm just going to select the default slot to be upper body, which is already native and comes with our third person blueprint. And from here, I'm going to drag this out and look for a layered blend per bone. And I'll connect this to the control rig. And then I will actually just unpin this and reconnect this to the bottom one and connect this main cache pose over here and connect this main cache pose to the upper one. And now when I select layered blend per bone, under my blend mode, I'm going to make sure it's set to branch filter, and under layer setup, I'm just going to add one to my index and my branch filters, and I'll click this add. And the one I'm going to select is, I'm going to name whatever bone I can. So I'm going to go over to my skeleton, and I kind of wanted to start animating above my spine. Let's do spine 03. So what I'm going to do is just copy this name, spine 03, and type this into bone name over here. So I'll do spine underscore 03. And then I also want to select this mesh space rotation blend like so. And I'll just say compile and save. And now when I go back to my animation spell, I can change this default group from .default slot to the slot name upper body like so. And it's going to T-pose at first, but if I just go to where this file is and close this out and reopen it, you'll see that it works accordingly. And now when I actually play this, you'll see that I can run, and now I can play my heel and it plays just fine. And you can see the bottom half of my body is doing that running animation. That's correct. And my upper half, or after spine 03, is now doing everything that the heel animation montage requires. And that's a pretty solid introduction to gameplay ability system. We got to experience some making a gameplay ability, making gameplay effects, adding them to our characters, modifying our C++, adding attributes, and creating the UI using a blueprint interface. If this video helped you at all, feel free to support my channel by subscribing, commenting below, liking my video, joining our Discord if you have any troubles, and you can check out my Patreon or join us on YouTube via the links below. Thanks for watching Coded Row. Thank you all so much for your support. And again, I'll see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, comment below what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching Coded Row. Until the next video. Thanks for watching.